Four ways in which they programmed you and me to be poor. Four ways in which they program you and me to be poor. And by you and me, we're talking about the lower class, the working class, whatever you want to call it, the majority of the people. Number one, the number one way in which they program us to be poor is by not teaching us personal finance in school. Let me say that again. The number one way they program us to be poor is by not teaching us personal financial education in the school. They don't teach us about assets, that assets put money in your pocket, such as stocks, ETF, real estate, bonds. They do not teach us at all about assets. They don't teach us about liabilities. Like liabilities take money out of your pocket, like those expensive cars, expensive vacation, and a lot of these things. They don't teach us about that. They don't teach us about compound interest. The earlier you start investing, the less money you have to put in on your own, and the more time does the work for you. They don't teach us about S&P 500, the total stock market. They don't teach us about mega cap, mid cap, small cap. They don't teach us about return on investments. They don't teach us about capital. They don't teach us about interest arbitrage, borrowing money at a lower interest, investing it in something at a higher interest, and then you make the difference. They don't teach us about mortgages, about the difference of a 30-year and a 15-year mortgage. They don't teach us about equity. They don't teach us about home equity line of credit. They don't teach us about any of that stuff, right? Net worth, income statement, balance sheet, collateral. They teach us about foreign languages. After multiple years of taking Spanish, still can't speak Spanish. I may know a couple of vocabulary words. They teach us about U.S. history and government and calculus and trigonometry, which have nothing to do with the real world when you go out into it. When you go to the bank to get a loan, they're not going to ask you were you on the honor roll, were you on the dean's list. They're going to ask you about your assets, your liabilities, your income, your expenses, your cash flow, your debt to income ratio, your credit score. So wouldn't it be nice since the whole world since the whole world is focusing on those things, those metrics that we would have been educated about it during those 12 years between K through 12, or 16 years if you went to college, or even more if you went to grad and professional school. Why wasn't we taught anything about that? Simply, they don't want us to know. They know that they didn't educate our parents. Our parents are not going to educate us. The neighbors and the people in our circle are not educated. Henceforth, they'll probably never get it, which is exactly what they want. A broke, desperate employee with one source of income. That's what you want. That person, you can bend over the barrel. They will do whatever you say. If you say, I need you to come in 6 days a week, they'll come in 6 days a week. If they say, you can't take this vacation, you can't go to your son's game, they won't go to the game because they have no other source of income. That's why they don't teach us about that. So that's the number one way they program us to be poor, is by having a lack of personal financial knowledge. But you're watching the MD Investor, so you try to break that cycle. The number two way in which they program us to be poor is to have that employee mentality. We are programmed to have that employee mentality. How many times we meet little kids, right? Maybe in your family or a kid you see, oh, what do you want to do when you grow up? And the implication is that you're going to be somebody's employee. Oh, you want to be this? Oh, yeah, you're going to have a great job working for someone else, working on somebody else's dream. making somebody else wealthy. We have that employee mentality from a young age. Or you're going to have a great job with good benefits. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, it was John D. Rockefeller back in the early 1900s that said, I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers. This was during the Industrial Revolution when all the factories were just humming and they needed more workers. And he donated lots of money to start a national public school system in which this public school was supported by the local taxes. Basically, they wanted to teach them obedience, punctuality, and following the rules, respect for authority. Even the way the school was designed, they look almost identical to the factories of that day. And even the bell that would ring to go from one class to the next class is the bell they would use in the factory for the end of one shift and the beginning of another shift, or the beginning of the lunch break or the end of the lunch break, and the same bell that would ring. So when you went from school and then you went to factory, you already indoctrinated into respect for the teacher, carries over for respect for the foreman or the supervisor. Be on time for your first class, be on time for your shift. When the bell rings, time to eat your lunch, it's the same bell that you're going to hear. To change class, it's the same thing. The shift is over. And that's what they wanted. They didn't want people to be thinking for themselves. How can I work for myself? They didn't want that. The third way in which the system programs us to be poor is by the constant advertising. Around Christmas time, pretty much right after Thanksgiving, Black Friday. What is that for? Go shop, go spend money that you really wasn't going to spend, but just because it's the annual time of year, you're going to spend money. Black Friday, 25% off, 50% off. Years ago, we've had people would trample people in the shopping mall to get their big screen TV. Right? How much should an engagement ring cost? 3 months' salary. Says who? The American Academy of Diamonds or Jewel or whoever it was. The people who are selling you the ring are telling you how much you should pay for it. 3 months' salary. So if you're making $10,000 a month, that girl gets a $30,000 ring. If you're making $3,000 a month, then that girl gets a $9,000 ring. But if you're making $100,000 a month, she gets a $300,000. You see what I mean? It's not like there's nothing that's really adequate or it's sufficient. It's a percentage of what you have. The more you have, the more we want you to spend. Right? So the constant advertising is to get you to spend money that you don't have to impress people that don't even like you. Because we know half of all marriages end in divorce. Let's move on in that one. And the constant advertising, it goes into other things. Cars and vacation, right? Everybody's taking social media picture of them on camel in Dubai, taking first class and all this thing, wearing expensive designer clothes, all from the advertising. And the fourth way in which we are programmed to be poor is to think that personal finance is complicated. With the fourth way in which we are programmed to be poor is to think that personal finance is complicated. With the you are. So they program us to be poor by not teaching us personal financial education. But we're breaking that by educating ourselves, by watching the MD Investor and educating ourselves and teaching our children so we can break the cycle of generational poverty. They gave us the employee mindset. That also programs us to be poor. Because if you have an employee mindset, you give the best 8, 10, or 12 hours of the day to your employer, working on his or her dream, making them rich, working in their business. But we should mind our own business and work on our own business, right? Think about the energy or the effort you give to your own business or to your own investments on your days off or on your hours after work. A lot of times, none of it. As soon as you get off work, I'm going to relax. I'm going to sit on the couch. You give no energy to your own business, to your family, financial well-being, but you give it all to a stranger who would care less if anything was to happen to you. You better focus on your own business. I did a video called Mind Your Own Business. You should check that out. It's about your personal business. The third way in which they program us to be poor is by advertising to us to buy liabilities, right? Nobody tells us we should buy assets. And the fourth way they program us to be poor is to convince us that personal finance and investing is too complicated for us. Don't worry about that. Go sit down and watch the game. But we're not doing that. Our eyes are wide open, and we're watching the MD Investor, and we are educating ourselves and teaching our children so we could break the cycle of generational poverty. MD Investor out. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube